I'm on the record on Locked On Jaguars saying that winning changes the perception of everything, even how people feel about certain players. I'll tell you how winning is going to change the perception of certain players on the Jacksonville Jaguars here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. That is your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast that you can find wherever you get those podcasts, right? Whether you watch or listen, we'll be there each and every day to be there. We got to shout out to everydayers for joining us every single day. And if it's your first time here, hopefully we'll give you a reason to double back. All right, here's what we're going to talk about today. We've often talked about how winning changes the perception of certain players. The only time we really care about perception that is outside of the market here is when it prohibits people from getting the due that they are deserved. More winning probably would have led to both Jimmy Smith and Fred Taylor being in the Pro Football Hall of Fame right now. They could have had the exact same stats that they have now, could have had the exact same performance that they had now. Maybe if those big moments would have come, those guys would have been able to score touchdowns in front of the whole world. And then media people that have voting could have been persuaded to do what they should have been doing anyway, and that's voting both of those guys into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But I digress, because this is where we are right now. They're not there, right? So one of the reasons is that, well, other than the fact that a lot of people that vote don't know what they're doing, we'll get that on out of the way, right? A lot of it is, though, that you ain't win enough. And if you win enough, you take all of that bias out of people's hands, right? So that's why the crux of this show is going to be talking about how the perception has changed. I can't change boneheaded media people. But what we can do is hope for more winning, and then that makes it easier for it to be recognized and for those guys to be given recognition for what they've done. And well, you can even rephrase that and say, well, it makes it more hard for people to be stupid. I mean, that's pretty much what it comes down to. It's either way. So what we're going to cover here today is how winning brings a change for certain players. We're going to end up talking about guys like Tyson Campbell, Trayvon Walker, and he's the one. He's been good, man. People are just a trip, right? But I understand it because Aiden Hutchinson has been great. Aiden Hutchinson has been better than good. He's been great. And his team has been winning, which gets back to the point that I'm making already. I think the biggest person on this list is going to be somebody that we hit up in the top of segment 2, which is Walker Little. We're going to start with the obvious, though. The obvious is Trevor and Josh Hines Allen. Josh Hines Allen was the first guy that's on this team. He was the first one of this bunch that got a mega contract. The first one of the current members of the Jacksonville Jaguars who was drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars to get a mega deal was Josh Hines Allen. He got drafted a year before Trevor Lawrence. Was it a year or 2 years? One of them, I think it was 2 years. He got drafted. Yeah, he got drafted a couple of years before Trevor Lawrence. Okay. Trevor got picked in 2021. Josh Allen was here in 2018. So, that's more than a couple of years, right? But he got his mega deal. He went through his 5th-year option, was the first guy to get paid, top 10 pick. And that basically lined up with something that I had always said. If the Jaguars continue to draft people but never re-sign people, there will always be starting over. And an analogy that I always had was you build a slab. First of all, if you look at a house being built, you build all of the underground stuff, the plumbing, and then you get the topsoil part, right? You have your what they call a building pad. And then once you start, you put your slab down and then attach it to everything that's underground. Then you start your elevation, right, with your frame. Every single year, it seems like when the Jaguars got to their elevation, they would scrap that plan and start all over and tear it down. The only way that you'll ever get a house or anything that looks like a house, and in this case, your house is your football team, is to build a foundation. And once it starts to grow, and you add to it, and eventually you add to it again. And I think the Jaguars are at that stage now where they're adding to everything. And this year is going to be where you start seeing stuff, because they re-signed Josh Allen, they re-signed Trevor Lawrence. That's the second player who got a max deal, who was drafted by this team in the last 5, 6, 7 years. So it's important. They did it twice, right? You're sitting there thinking that, well, they kind of did it again with Walker Little, even though it wasn't a mega deal. And then they hinted they're going to do it with Trayvon. They actually did it too with Tyson Campbell. So that's why we're naming all of these dudes. These are the dudes that the re-signed guys, right? So they're going to represent the people that make the most money. Hopefully they're re-signing guys that they pick very high because they hit on those draft picks. And in these cases, I'm talking about dudes that were taken in the first and second round. Talking about two that were number 1 picks overall. So Trevor and Josh are the obvious ones, right? Trevor's obviously going to have, if they start winning, and he statistically does all of the things because of all of the stuff that everybody said about him. And I chronicled that over my last 2 podcasts, by the way. If you haven't seen them, go check them out. I did all of the stuff about Trevor Lawrence, so we ain't going to go back over that. But Joshua Hines-Allen is that dude that every time you look up at the top defensive lineman, he's somewhere between 7 and 11 in terms of edge rushers, right? But he's only had sacks. In 6 seasons, he's had double-digit sacks twice. And he was here in 2019, by the way, not 2018. 2019. Drafted after the 2018 season. That was a big disappointment. And that's how the Jaguars ended up back in the top 10. So in 2017, they obviously went to the AFC Championship game, picked dead last, and ended up taking Trayvon Bryant. I believe in the 2018 draft. And we remember that because of who they didn't take. Okay. So, by the way, that's Lamar Jackson. But anyway, we're past that. I think Josh Allen is the best player in the league that everybody thinks is a really good player. But really, if you really take a deep dive into it, it's like, okay, there's another level that he can go to on the consciousness of everybody who always says he's so good. The only thing he's missing is winning. He's probably going to break the Jaguar sack record this year if he hasn't already. I think he got to catch Tony Brackens a little bit if he hasn't done that already. So, yeah. I just think that there's a little bit more recognition that could be thrown his way, especially considering how much money he makes. But I think he's done enough. Even if it's about pressures and hurries, he's done enough to be recognized. The problem is they haven't won enough. They just have not won enough to make anybody really want to pay attention to anything. Yeah, so Josh Hines-Allen, he's 2 sacks behind Tony Brackens. If he gets 2.5 sacks, he's going to be the all-time leader in sacks with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Winning changes the perception of those 2 players. Because when you look around the league and you ask around the league and folks say, who are the 2 top players for the Jacksonville Jaguars, outside of Brian Thomas Jr., who you ain't got to worry about contractually for another 3 years, at least, maybe even 4. They always talk about Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen. The only thing that's stopping them, maybe it's a little bit of their play. The only thing really, really stopping them from actually being considered amongst the top 10 people at their positions on a consistent basis, I believe they have to couple their play with winning, which means they have to play a little bit better. But if everything else does what it's supposed to do, what they have done to this point would actually be good enough to catapult them into a different territory. So the Jaguars have to win. And we're going to talk about Walker Little in just a second because he, I believe, is the dude that would be he would be the biggest recipient of a whole lot of love and a whole lot of apologies, and 1 or 2 of them might even come from yours truly. We'll talk about Walker Little in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances. SGA, man, last night. Major momentum shifts and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I'm going to tell you right now, man, what would it look like to combine live props and mid-game based on how the action actually unfolds? In-game action, that's the key. All right, if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day, talking about the players who have the most to gain from a perception standpoint if the Jacksonville Jaguars start winning. We've mentioned Trevor Lawrence and Josh Hines Allen. Let's get to the biggest recipient of all, and that is Walker Little. Walker Little was not a first-round pick, but he was a very high second-round pick. A lot of people, including myself, have talked about the fact that for a guy chosen that highly, he hasn't gotten on the field enough, either at right or left tackle. They actually re-signed Cam Robinson after they drafted Walker Little and kept him for like a couple more years. They did not re-sign, who's that kid? The one that went to Kansas City, the offensive line, Juwan Taylor. They did not re-sign. I forgot about him just that quick. They did not re-sign him, and I went all crazy on him because I'm like, they ain't never going to build this house if they get rid of decent parts at least. That actually wasn't a bad move in hindsight, even though he played pretty well for Jaguars here. He's won a Super Bowl in Kansas City. They might be ready to run him out of Kansas City with all of those penalties that he's been getting. But in any event, they then drafted Anton Harrison after I thought them getting rid of or not re-signing Juwan Taylor would lead to more opportunities for Walker Little. But before he even got a shot, man, they drafted another first-round tackle. So now I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, what's the deal? Is he good enough or he's not? They re-signed another dude. They drafted another guy. Okay, then the next year, Cam Robinson gets suspended. So I'm thinking like, okay, well, maybe they can cut him with cause, or that's some kind of violation of his policy or his contract in some sort of way. But no, they stuck right there with him. Walker Little went in at left tackle for a while, and when Cam came back, he came back. Then he got hurt again, and he left again. Then the Jaguars held on to Cam coming into another season and waited until the trade deadline to trade him. And then they re-signed Walker Little to a contract, and he hadn't really played that much. So it's like, I don't want to hold stuff against Walker Little that should be pointed at Doug Peterson, Trent Baalke, Phil Rauscher. But then I got to remember, Trent Baalke is the one that drafted him. If he's ready now, Phil Rauscher is the one that did that. And Doug Peterson was a part of that. And then I can't get mad because, well, Trent Baalke is the one who paid him to keep him again. So I could say that Walker Little would benefit from it, but maybe it would be those three also, because if he turns out to be ready now, well, he just get ready because of the new staff. It's something that they did when they drafted him. When they drafted him, he had been out because of COVID and because of a knee injury. They slow played it. They took their time. And now here he is. And if he plays well this year and they win, oh, man, it'll look like a genius move. It'll look like people will have to then start turning around saying, we're sorry, Trent and Doug and Phil. Y'all at least did something you were supposed to do. But as normal, what usually happens is anything that you do good doesn't matter when the rest of the team, when everything else is a dumpster fire. So if there's 3, 4, 5, or 6 things that you've done well, and then it doesn't lead to records and it doesn't all mesh together and it's not all complimentary, and then everybody gets fired, well, that's what happens. That's why you end up the way we end up here. And that's why we end up saying that if Walker Little actually turns out to be good, and if the team actually wins, this will be a win-win for everybody. And yeah, y'all will get a couple of attaboys for it too. The issue with this is if that's what happens, it would also highlight another fact or factor about the Jaguars. And I'm a big need-to-know basis dude. You got to tell me everything. But there's a way that they could have communicated better what their plan was and what they were trying to do with Walker Little. And see, that goes back to that little bit of arrogance or that little bit of something that Doug Peterson said after a game when I believe Brent Martineau, a very professional dude, asked him a question and he said, I ain't going to go and get all of that. You ain't going to understand it anyway. And so there's too much. There used to be too much of you ain't going to understand it anyway. Well, now they go overboard to try to explain everything, but at least they're not redundant. They say it the first time. I believe they spoke loud and clear when they added the competition that they added, and then they go out and get Wyatt Milliam, who has most of the linemen that they get have experience at other positions also. Do I believe that they think this is Walker Little's job to lose? No, I don't think they're doing that. I think they're going to make everybody compete. But what I do believe is that his contract, what they may think of him, they're going to give him a chance. And he has a chance, man. He does. He's played a lot of football. If he didn't play here before and we looked at his resume, we'd go, yeah, he's been out. But when he was healthy, he played a lot of football and he's taken a lot of snaps. Kind of what we're all saying with Chuma Edoga. The difference is he does have that contract. And it starts this year. This is the first year of that deal. All right. So he's going to have a shot. And if they can get it done and he can pull it off, that's going to look like a big coup for the Jaguars. Now, if they don't, then it means either Wyatt Miller is going to play left tackle in the future, or that's the thing they're going to be looking for next year in the offseason, because they definitely need that. Trayvon Walker, I'm going to mention him here in segment 2. Y'all know I'm on record saying Trayvon's been great. Trayvon spoke to the media yesterday, and Trayvon always sounds like he has that. Trayvon sounds like a dude with the answers to the questions before you even ask him. It sounds like somebody must have gave him a class on how to answer questions. Shout out to Lasagna and my man Steve, because I know where he gets it from. But he also has carried that over and has not allowed the opinions of a lot of people that really don't follow Jaguars football very closely to change who he is and what he is. And he stands behind that mic, and he's a sure young man. So it's almost an insult for me to have him on this list, but I'm going to have him on because, like I said, we got dumb people doing this job sometimes, and they don't realize good when they see it. Nobody said a thing about Trayvon Walker during the 2021. Well, during the season they did, but after the 2021 season or the 2022 season, at the end of the year when the Jaguars were in the playoffs and the Detroit Lions were home and Trayvon Walker was running around tackling people and being physical and the Jaguars were competing, people go, yeah, I understand why they picked him. Okay. And before all of that even happened, I said, if the Jaguars as a team, whichever team takes off, no matter what the player does, people are going to give a little bit of grace to whoever is playing on the team that's winning. And that's what happened to Trayvon and his 4.5 sacks. Before y'all get on me about that, I'm going to tell you right now, the rookie of the year last year was Jared Verse, and he had 4.5 sacks. So Trayvon getting those 4.5 sacks was on a winning team, just like the Rams won last year. Nobody says a word because then they look stupid. And so people never want to look dumb. Trust me, folks are always trying to protect their stupid. They ain't going to just let it out. Now, they're smart enough to do that, right? They waited until the Jaguars started losing to start talking about Trayvon, and they waited till Aiden Hutchinson started winning and started getting a lot of sacks to start talking about the difference between the two. Now, I'm not trying to minimize anybody that thinks that the Jaguars made a mistake. That's fine. Don't care. What I do care about is this. Trayvon Walker's got 20 sacks in the last 2 years, 20 and a half, in fact. But the Jaguars haven't been winning. So guess who got real loud? All of those anti-Trayvon Walker people got loud. So like I said, it's almost an insult for me to have him on here, but we are talking about those people. Trayvon Walker gets 10 sacks this year and the Jaguars win 11 games, he will be on the All-Pro team. I'm telling you. If they win 11 or 12 games, especially the ones on prime time, and Trayvon Walker does the things that I think he can do, the things that you all have seen him do, he mess around and get one of those multi-sack games, or chase somebody down from behind, or set the edge on a big situational play. and all of a sudden everybody's going to change their mind again. We'll go ahead and accept them in, though, if they want to do that and start giving credit where credit is deserved. In segment 3, I'm going to talk about someone who is a bit of an enigma when I have conversations with people about this team. That's Tyson Campbell. My man Chris Porter over there at WTLV, First Coast News, of course. That is our sister and brother over there. He did a series on Tyson Campbell. It was very, very good. If you can, go check that out on First Coast News website. I'll talk about Tyson Campbell here in a moment on Locked On Jaguars. Third and final segment here, discussing how winning brings a change to narratives about certain people and certain players. We discussed Trevor Lawrence, Josh Allen a little bit, a lot with Walker Little, and a lot with Trayvon Walker. And now we're going to talk about Tyson Campbell, University of Georgia corner Tyson Campbell, who is now in his 5th year, I believe. It's the same as Trevor Lawrence, right? It is. It's the exact same as Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence playing on a 5th-year option this year. Tyson Campbell playing the 1st year of his contract. He was a 2nd-round pick. So this is actually technically the 1st year of his extension. And some people believe that he's been a bit of a disappointment. He was better than Andre Cisco was here. When he was playing at his highest, it was higher than Cisco's highest. Obviously, Cisco was a safety who's no longer here. Andre Cisco just couldn't stay healthy. And then I think he was a bit of a tweener. Tyson Campbell has improved, but to most people, that's not enough, because if you're paying him the kind of money you're paying him, and then they look around and see Derek Stingley's money and Sauce Gardner's money that he's going to get, and they look around at the other corners, the really, really good corners in the league, and they say, well, he ain't living up to that. And I would agree with him. They had to make a decision on him getting paid. Some people might think that Trent paying Tyson Campbell was a justification of the fact that he chose Tyson Campbell. They might be right about that too. I don't think he's lived up to or earned the extension that he got. And I'm going to tell you, last year I was saying I understood it. So I can understand it. And I could say I probably would have done it. But I still don't believe he earned it. So that means that I'm just like everybody else. If I was in a situation and I had to do that, I probably would have done it. If it makes any sense to everybody, I probably would have done Jawan Taylor too, and he probably didn't earn that. And sometimes those are the tough decisions that you have to make. Trent Baalke didn't make it with Jawan Taylor. He didn't pick him. But he did make it with Tyson Campbell. He did pick him. And I know they are 2 different positions. And I realize all of that. But has Tyson Campbell played 1 full season in 4 years? Maybe. I know he hasn't played more than 1. Where's the spectacular play? See, he's more of a dude that doesn't allow things to happen while he's in the game or while he's there for the most part. But he's also the dude that doesn't do a whole lot on the side of above X's and O's. Ain't no special effects and all of that stuff. Is that good? Could be. If the team wins, no problem. If they don't win, it's a problem. Now that they have Travis Hunter, then they have Jordan Lewis. Jarian Jones might be very, very important when it comes to, well, what if Tyson struggles a little bit? Because sometimes when guys struggle, you got to leave them in there because that's all you got. We know that. We've seen that here in Jacksonville. Maybe with different coaching, maybe with more effective interior pass rush, even if it's not personnel influenced, but it is schematically influenced and philosophy and philosophically influenced. Maybe those things will lead to Tyson Campbell getting more recognition. Winning definitely will. At worst, he ain't never going to be Jalen Ramsey, but he could be A.J. Bouye. And A.J. Bouye across from a dude like Travis Hunter, who's going to play more defense than people are out there pretending that he ain't. Yeah, he will, especially in critical moments, is good enough. So Trevor and Josh, Walker Little, Trayvon Walker, Tyson Campbell. An honorable mention here is Brenton Strange. Came on a little bit last year, played when Evan Ingram and those guys got hurt. Let's see what he does this year. He's more of a complete tight end than Evan Ingram. Maybe not as dynamic of a pass catcher. Maybe he is, and we just didn't know it because the offense was so bad. We'll just have to see. I know a few years ago, I thought Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren were better than him. When Strange was still in college, I thought he was the third best tight end in Penn State. I also have been told that Trent Baalke was not the only person that liked Brenton Strange. So there's a chance that Brenton Strange was also liked a lot by Les Snead, James Gladstone, and everybody else that evaluated him. And some of those people are in the building right now, and they know how to use him. And plus, he has good tape from last year. I'm just glad those move tight ends are gone because they ain't nothing but big wide receivers. If you're gonna have a move tight end, unless he's a Hall of Famer like Travis Kelce, you better just go get you another wide receiver who can catch the ball. That's all. Go get Matt Collins. You want to move tight end? Go get Matt Collins. He's a wide receiver. You ain't got to pay him a whole bunch of money. But just stop pretending that those guys are valuable just because they can catch the ball when all they are is undersized tight ends and slow wide receivers. Make sure you check out Locked On NFL. OTAs are going on right now. If anything happens, I'll make sure that's the first thing I tell you about on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Jaguars. Tune in to Locked On NFL Scouting. Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino, they know every team in the league. That's all they do is talk about players, depth charts. They'll make you smarter this year for the 2025 NFL season. Till tomorrow, you guys take care. Thank you for spending 27 minutes with me here today on Locked On Jaguars. We'll see you next time. Take care.